Some of the country's top military officials in College Station discussing ways to modernize battlefield for potential future conflicts. What they're teaching everyone coming up. Plus, when a child goes missing, every second counts. How organizations here in the Brazos Valley are helping law enforcement get missing kids home quickly and safely.
And it was a day with some rain here across the Brazos Valley, and some of that was heavy, but it is going to heat up for the rest of the week. Your 25 News starts right now.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being with us at 6. The U.S. Department of Defense and industry players are all in Aggieland this week for a major symposium. Tonight, Krhd News reporter Hannah King is taking us inside.
Held at the Texas A&M Hotel and Conference Center, the symposium was presented by the National Defense Industrial Association, an organization educating attendees on national security issues. Several hundred people and a vast community interested in national security came together Monday.
So we're listening to concepts, we're looking at different technologies, and then really listening to what the services have to say to their academic partners and with their industry partners as well.
Gibb, executive director of the George H.W. Bush Combat Development Complex, a complex advancing military innovation, says they are working on the future of warfare.
Some of the things are hypersonics, directed energy, laser diagnostics, resilient networks, autonomy. Those are the types of things that we work at the George H.W. Bush Combat Development Complex.
Texas A&M is hosting the conference because of its emerging role as a U.S. hub for national security research.
You know, I said this is the future of warfare, but really this is mostly about deterrence, because if you're ahead against your near-peer adversaries in these areas, hopefully you won't have to fight the next war.
Leading efforts alongside NDIA to bring the conference to the A&M campus is Stephen Cambone. Cambone says the conference is about protecting the country.
The idea is that the U.S. Armed Forces are going to have to be able to fight in the air, in space, on the ground, and at sea, and in cyberspace, simultaneously across the globe. So how do you command and control those forces in a way that allow them to accomplish their mission and succeed in protecting the country?
Cambone says discussions being held over the next couple of days are critical.
Because in the world we're moving into, as we all know, unless you're able to talk and communicate across every circumstance you can imagine, once those communications fail, you're lost. So to the extent we can advance the capability of the country in that direction, the better for us.
Just to name a few, government attendees, aerospace and defense executives, and academia were among those at the conference. The purpose is to help participants talk to one another about how to make progress.
Basically, our objective is to bring industry and academia together with the government, the Department of Defense and Congress, to solve the most challenging problems that our young men and women in uniform face, and to give them the best technology.
Today's session on A&M's campus was NDIA's first in-person event since the pandemic began. Reporting from Texas A&M, Hannah King, Krhd News.
New at 6 on this Monday, America's top general in Afghanistan stepping down. General Austin Miller officially handing over his command to General Kenneth McKenzie, the leader of U.S. Central Command. It is a key milestone in the U.S. military withdrawal from Afghanistan. Miller is the longest-serving U.S. commander throughout that 20-year conflict. He says he's still concerned about the Taliban's growing influence, but that violence is not the answer. The second round of the Texas voting bill kicking off this weekend with a House committee voting to advance that GOP-backed bill. The bill brings back many proposals that failed to pass during the regular session in the spring. Senate lawmakers also advancing their own version of the legislation after a public hearing. Meantime, Democrats in the state house are flying to D.C. to try and derail the bill. They need at least 51 Democrats to leave for that plan to work. The move should block voting by denying Republicans the quorum needed to actually take a vote. The House is set to reconvene Tuesday morning, but without the Democrats there won't be enough members present to officially conduct business. Now, even if Democratic lawmakers stay out of state for the next few weeks, Governor Abbott can continue to call 30-day special sessions. He could also add voting legislation to the agenda of another session later in the year. The legislature is already set to reconvene again in the fall to redraw the state's political districts. So what are some of the things including in this voting legislation? Both chambers' bills include a ban on drive-through voting and a ban on 24-hour voting, new regulations for early voting hours. The bills would also ban the distribution of mail-in ballot applications. New ID requirements for voting by mail would be included, and more poll watcher protections as well. When an Amber Alert is activated, nearly the entire state is notified. But what else is done to help locate missing children? Tonight, Sydney Eisenberg introduces you to two organizations in the Brazos Valley working to get missing kids home safely.
When a child goes missing, every second counts. That's why organizations like Amber Alert Network Brazos Valley and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children were created to help law enforcement and get these kids back home quickly and safely.
Ultimately, the missing child case is absolutely law enforcement's case. We are purely supporting their case. And we have a very large toolbox that we've built for the past 36, 37 years of tools, resources, family support, private sector relationships that we bring to the table and apply to these cases for free.
FBI data shows in 2020, there were more than 365,000 missing children reports made across the country, a dip from the more than 421,000 reports we saw in 2019. It's not just a national problem. It's happening in our own backyard.
Every year across the Brazos Valley, there's a little over 400 missing person reports, and of those, about 320 are children.
When it comes to a missing child, community awareness is key.
We used to see them all the time on the back of our milk cartons. Now the posters of missing children can be found sprinkled across social media. Now, while this is a helpful tool, experts say it also comes with some downsides.
It's a wonderful tool. It's wonderful technology, but sometimes rumors transpire much more quickly on social media. And our response to that is always seek the information, the appropriate information from the law enforcement agency.
Despite the downsides, experts say one share of a social media post can make a difference.
Your friends, your circle of friends is going to be different than your friend's circle of friends. In your own little circle of your life, it may not touch somebody, but you may know somebody who does have contact, who can get it to that person.
When sharing that post, it's important to leave any judgments at the door.
One of the things we always strive to let people know is that even if a child leaves voluntarily, that doesn't mean that bad things can't happen to them when they're out on the streets. We never lose sight of the fact that, that it's not just numbers, it's people, and it's loved ones who want to bring them home, and bring them home quickly and safely.
Not every case has a happy ending, but Bischoff says the mission must continue.
We have to learn from those cases because there are a lot of kids out there counting on us, not just the ones missing today, but the ones who are going to go missing tomorrow. And they're relying on our organization and many organizations like us, including our partnership with many law enforcement agencies out there, to stand at the ready with the most knowledgeable information on how to recover them, how to find them safely, how to find them quickly.
We in the Brazos Valley area, we are very blessed to live in a pretty safe community, but we're not immune from things that can happen. I think sometimes we get complacent. We go, well, that's not going to happen here. It happens less frequently, but it can happen here. And so we can't let our guard down. We can't forget that unfortunately there are those out there that would do harm to the most vulnerable among us, and those being our children. And so we have to do everything we can to help protect them.
Experts say the best way to protect your children and your community is to be vigilant. And if you see something, say something. Sydney Eisenberg, KRHD News.
A group of kids with special needs found a way to beat this afternoon's thunderstorms, all while having a good time. Tonight, KRHD News reporter Rachel Espaillat shares one woman's mission to boost inclusion here in the Brazos Valley.
Bowling is a family-friendly sport that people of all ages and abilities can enjoy, and that's why Avocation Therapy chose Grand Station for their first outing. Not even the typical bowling environment was an opponent at this sensory-friendly bowling event at Grand Station Entertainment. Avocation Therapy hit a strike working with Grand Station. The bowling center accommodated the group by opening earlier, lowering the music, and adjusting the lighting. This was the recreational therapist's first time hosting a group event, but plans to hold even more in the future.
I believe that people with disabilities deserve access to community resources and recreation, but sometimes they need help to access those resources. So I am trying to break down those barriers.
Helping preteens and teenagers with special needs tap into their passions while knocking out obstacles. In College Station, Rachel Espaillat, KRHD News.
Things are heating up again when it comes to President Biden's infrastructure bill. The Senate returning from their July 4th recess, and the House is set to return next week. Our Joe St. George breaking it all down.
Understanding the infrastructure debate in Congress can be a bit confusing, and that's why we're going for a drive. First stop, President Biden and moderate Democrats and Republicans. They want a bipartisan deal creating $579 billion in new infrastructure spending. For the moment, they think they have the votes to pass this into law. Next stop, conservative leadership. They don't want to raise taxes or spend much more than what's in the bipartisan deal, and some won't vote for the bipartisan deal at all. The final stop, progressive Democrats. They want an additional multi-trillion-dollar spending bill to create programs left out of the bipartisan deal. Major action on infrastructure is expected this week as Congress returns from its July 4th recess. To borrow another transportation analogy, think of this debate as two trains attempting to leave the station at the exact same time. The bipartisan deal is on train number 1. This legislation addresses roads, bridges, trains, and broadband, traditional infrastructure projects. The progressive spending bill is on train number 2. This legislation will address education and child care costs. Speaker Nancy Pelosi has already said the bipartisan deal, train number 1, doesn't make it to the White House unless train number 2, the separate spending bill, is moving through Congress as well. The bipartisan deal includes 0 increases in taxes.
If no taxes are being raised to pay for this infrastructure plan, where is all this infrastructure money coming from?
As far as the bipartisan deal goes, Congress is getting a bit creative. For instance, their plan includes cutting $70 billion from the nation's unemployment benefit program, although lawmakers say it won't impact people out of work. They want to redirect $80 billion in COVID relief funds to fund infrastructure, as well as tell the FCC to generate $65 billion by auctioning off 5G airwave access. Not to mention, Democrat and Republican negotiators want the IRS to audit more Americans. In fact, Congress plans on hiring new investigators to collect $140 billion in taxes the federal government believes they are entitled to. One thing you should know, everything remains fluid on Capitol Hill as this complicated and very large infrastructure debate is expected to receive its first votes in the coming weeks. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
The Washington Monument is reopening Wednesday after being closed since January because of the pandemic. Masks will be required for all visitors regardless of if you're vaccinated. And another change, visitors can now only purchase tickets online. The monument reopened in October last year, only to be shut down again because of another wave of COVID. National Parks officials are hoping this time it'll stay open for good. The first payments in the Biden administration's enhanced child tax credit are due to start rolling out this week. Heads of household can get up to $3,600 for each child up to 6 years old and $3,000 for each 6 to 17-year-old child. Half of that credit can be claimed when filing income taxes for the year. The other half will be paid in monthly installments from now through the end of the year. The IRS has partnered with nonprofits to reach households that may not file taxes. Now to a consumer alert. General Motors is recalling more than 400,000 trucks over an issue that could cause an airbag to suddenly deploy for no reason. Impacted vehicles include 1,500, 2,500, and 3,500 series pickup trucks made from 2015 to 2016. GMC and Chevy plan to notify owners of those recalled vehicles next month. You can go to your local dealership for a fix.
And taking a look at our clouds and radar, we did have showers and thunderstorms early here in Bryan College Station for a lot of the Brazos Valley, but that's starting to push off to the east of I-45 now. And it does appear things will be quieting down for the rest of tonight going into tomorrow. Maybe a few isolated thunderstorms this week, but other than that, I think the big rain threat happened earlier this afternoon. As things will start to quiet down across the region, things are looking pretty quiet for most of the northern half of the state, and that drier air is starting to penetrate a little farther down to the south. And as our upper ridge to the west starts to build back in, I do think this is going to start cutting off our rain chances. We'll see that in our future track as we take you into 10 o'clock tonight. Things are pretty quiet out there. That's going to go right into tomorrow morning. But places that saw some heavier rain, can't rule out some patchy fog. And as we move our way into the afternoon, notice a few green dots there. We may have an isolated storm or two Tuesday afternoon here across the Brazos Valley. Then as we get into Wednesday, again, maybe some morning low clouds, maybe a few isolated thunderstorms on into the afternoon, and that will be about it. So for tonight, temperatures down into the low to mid 70s. It will be humid out there, and again, some low clouds to greet you in the morning. And then during the afternoon, highs will make it up into the lower 90s, which is below normal for this time of year, but with the humidity, it'll feel like the mid to upper 90s. So a steam bath out there, not just for tomorrow, but likely the rest of the week as well. But temperatures slightly below normal, 91, 92 degrees. That'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, into Thursday, going into Friday as well. Notice we have isolated thunderstorms here at about 20%. But again, I think most of us have seen the bulk of the rain that we're going to see this week. But a few splash and dash showers and storms are possible. Weekend looks pretty warm. Highs will be into the middle 90s, but that's seasonable for this time of year going into Monday of next week. Then another weak front may try to approach from the north again, and we may have some more rain chances here as we head toward the middle of next week.
The early child tax credit payment should start hitting bank accounts this week. The monthly payments of $250 or $300 depend on the age of the child, and they start on Thursday. They will continue through the end of the year. The IRS is automatically sending the payments based on 2019 and 2020 tax returns or to those who use the non-filers tool to register. It's designed to help the lowest income families with children. Stimulus payments and other expanded benefits have helped many low-income earners avoid turning to expensive loans to cover regular bills.
We're seeing that as the economy is working to improve itself, that more people are contacting us that they're getting stuck by these loans again, actually.
Sarah Nelson-Paulmeyer is the executive director of a nonprofit named Exodus Lending. It helps Minnesota residents who fall into the payday loan lending cycle. The nonprofit provided us these pictures you see here. Exodus will pay off the loan, then let the borrower make smaller, fee-free payments over the course of a year or so. She says the average borrower is a woman of color in her 40s, just trying to make ends meet.
Let's put it this way, she said, Sarah, 2 and 2 do not make 5. My expenses every month are 5, and my income is 2 and 2, which is 4. And I struggle with that because I have basic expenses. And she said, I'm not talking about going to Starbucks every day. I'm not talking about getting a big screen TV or a big fancy car. I'm talking about putting food on the table and gas in the car and paying my rent.
Payday loans often charge fees based on the amount borrowed. A couple $100 can cost about $30 in fees. When the loan is due, if the borrower can't pay the full amount, they end up just paying the fee and rolling it into another loan with new fees. Now in Minnesota, the average borrower typically takes out 7 loans before they can repay the original amount, according to Exodus. Now Exodus gets money to lend from investors and donations. It got its start more than 5 years ago when legislative efforts to cap interest rates on short-term loans first failed in Minnesota. Black churches across the country have played a key role in reducing vaccine hesitancy throughout the pandemic. Now faith leaders want to do more. Michelle London shows us how they're shifting their focus to other health issues in hopes they can reduce disparities.
For more than a year here at New Hope Church, the pews have remained empty.
Freedom's reward entails payment of what's owed.
Still, each week, Senior Pastor Eugene Downing faithfully delivers a powerful message for Sunday service, as though the sanctuary were full.
Paul tells these Jewish Christians in Rome is more than an opportunity to raise a flag about what's wrong in America.
A message filled with hope but sometimes one of truth from a painful past in our country.
But there needs to be a reckoning about how this independence this nation celebrates came to be.
As his virtual sermon comes to a close, Reverend Downing reminds each member tuned in where to put their trust.
At the end of the day, we can still find some solace in knowing that God is still in charge.
Here at New Hope in Denver, that trust instilled goes beyond spiritual wellness.
And so I think just together, right, we attempt to really keep an eye on health disparities, but even more than that, just health awareness around issues that particularly affect African American community a little more adversely.
He talks health disparities surrounding illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. Partnering with retired medical professionals in his congregation, Downing is providing a safe space for members to stay healthy and informed.
We've done mental health fairs. We've done physical health fairs.
During the pandemic, Reverend Downing says health efforts shifted. 1,200 COVID vaccines have since been administered to his members who may have been hesitant at first.
Our experience with the medical community, we've learned both during COVID and of course before, isn't always on par with the experience of other cultures.
A reason Downing says his congregation may feel more comfortable addressing health concerns with leaders of faith.
And what we've learned is that empowers persons to then go to their doctor, right?
It's comfortable coming here. You know, you see people from your community.
Convenience is also a factor.
Do you just come yourself, or is there any family members?
I come myself.
Makia Milton only travels a few blocks for her appointments at the faith-based Inner City Health Center. At this medical facility, the primary focus is accessible, affordable health care to underserved communities.
Primary purpose is to be a place where people who fall through the cracks can be welcomed and receive the full complement of care that they need.
CEO of Inner City Health Center, Krhd Burleson, is also the pastor of Loving Saints Christian Fellowship. Burleson says the center has administered more than 10,000 vaccines through pop-up clinics. But he's seen a decline in checkups for other major health issues.
We need to bring those back to the forefront. We need to attend to those things. We need to monitor your diabetes. We need to know how your blood pressure levels are.
Reverend Burleson says this starts with actively going into neighborhoods and meeting people where they are. His outreach program, Congregational Health Ministries, does just that.
Bringing education and providing screenings where people congregate, whether they're at their church or an agency or some other event or venue in the community.
To address these health disparities nationally, 50 black churches in these states across the country have joined to form Choose Healthy Life. This initiative partners with the United Way of New York City to address health disparities.
They're coming here, then they feel safe. Then why wouldn't I feel safe or comfortable, you know?
Downing and Burleson agree. The safety Makia and others are feeling all starts with trust.
Our community needs a place where they can be certain that their best interests are taken to heart and that the information they're given is unique to who we are and what we're navigating as a people in this country. So God bless you, family.
I'm Michelle London reporting.
May heaven smile upon you.
All right, Michelle, thank you. And you may not have been tipping on takeout before the pandemic, but we're looking at how the social norms are changing around when you should be leaving a tip and just how much. The rise of ransomware attacks directed at U.S. companies is creating demand for a new service from cybersecurity experts. Ransomware negotiators are helping companies reduce the cost of an attack and prevent future ones from happening.
This concept of let's make paying the ransom illegal. That's not fixing the problem. That's basically doing what happened to drugs in the United States. When you make something illegal, all it does is increase supply and demand and drive up the price. So all you're going to see is the ransom go up. We just need to step back and say, we got to do the work.
As of right now, ransomware attacks are expected to cost organizations $20 billion this year alone. Fuel is a big polluter of the environment, and planes use a lot of it. The solution that could be coming to the aviation industry that can turn plastic into jet fuel components in just an hour.
It is summer vacation across most of the country. Libraries and schools are sitting empty. But as we move into the fall, testing for COVID-19 is starting to ramp up again. I'm Chris Conti, and tomorrow we'll show you why that's so important in keeping schools open this fall.
Time now for a look at sports. Joining us is WTAW Zach Taylor with the latest.
Hey KRHD viewers, 2 Texas A&M baseball players were taken on day 2 of the MLB draft. Left-handed pitcher Dustin Signs was selected by the Washington Nationals with the 112th overall pick. Meanwhile, teammate and right-handed pitcher Bryce Miller was taken the very next selection by the Seattle Mariners. For the MLB Lone Star teams, the Texas Rangers made some noise last night by selecting Vanderbilt ace Jack Leiter with the number 2 overall selection. Now, due to punishment from the 2017 sign-stealing scandal, the Houston Astros didn't get their first pick until today's 3rd round when they took high school outfielder Tyler Whitaker at number 87 overall. The MLB Home Run Derby is tonight in Denver. Rangers slugger Joey Gallo goes up against hometown hero Trevor Story in the 1st round. Angels two-way star Shohei Ohtani, who is set to make the start on the mound for the American League tomorrow, is the number 1 overall seed. First pitch is tonight at 7 o'clock at Coors Field. In 2015, British Open champ Zach Johnson has withdrawn from the tournament after testing positive for COVID-19. From the WTAW Sports Studio, I'm Zach Taylor.
A commercial airplane can burn a few gallons of fuel per mile. For context, that's way more than what your car does on the way to work. Chloe Nordquist shows us a group of scientists is looking at how they can make fuel more sustainable, efficient, and cost-effective.
It's very hard to bring these huge engines to run on other things when they carry that much weight.
Fuel is a big polluter of the environment, and the aviation industry uses a lot of it.
As modern societies, we're particularly good at producing trash.
Port of Seattle Commission President Fred Felleman says they are working on getting away from petroleum-based fuel products in pursuit of fuels made with feedstock or grease and waste oils. The port's goal is to power every flight in and out of here with at least 10% blend of sustainable aviation fuel by 2028.
The airlines see the writing on the walls. If they want to be able to continue to fly in this ever increasingly warmer planet, they're going to have to get to this new fuel source.
Inside this lab, scientists and engineers have been working to solve multiple problems at once by turning recycled plastics into fuel.
In this process, we break with the plastic to smaller molecules.
The process can convert 90% of plastic to jet fuel components or other hydrocarbon products in just an hour with the help of heat, a solvent, and a catalyst.
We consider as a waste, right? But from the other perspective, it actually is an energy source or chemical source. It can be used as a raw materials, and then we can convert those raw materials to value-added products.
However, Hongfei Lin says not all plastic is the same, and some are better than others.
The plastic that we used to convert then to the jet fuel is this plastic. It's called high density with polyethylene.
The final product looks just like this and could be used as part of a fuel mixture.
Your carbon molecules it kind of have a long chain, like carbon, they stitch it together and becomes a long chain molecule. And the plastic is very long chain. Right? And for the jet fuel, it actually is a medium chain with hydrocarbons.
This is the idea of chemical recycling.
Instead of breaking them and melting them, making plastic, well, we clean the plastic and then we break down the molecule to remake new polymers. So this is called like chemical recycling instead of mechanical recycling.
Sustainability expert Anik Ansil says when it comes to the idea of chemical recycling plastic, the big challenge currently is efficiency.
Instead of recycling them, if we can break down the molecules and go back and make high-quality polymer again, instead of trying to downcycle the plastic into other products.
While plastics are being given new life, this process still has one caveat. Plastic is originally made from fossil fuel, meaning when it's converted, it's not considered a low-carbon fuel. But Hong Fei says that could change if plastics are made differently.
It can make with plastics from biomass, which is renewable.
And this fuel could still provide a cheaper choice.
So far, it will reduce the cost.
As alternative, more sustainable fuel options become more common, airports and airlines are ready to embrace the change.
We've been working at this for over a decade, and we are now at the verge of really being able to get to the next step and having our ability to have fuel in the pipeline, into the tanks.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
Antibiotic resistance is seen as one of the biggest public health challenges of our time.
Bacteria that have become resistant to antibiotics are much harder to treat and can cause major health issues to the human population.
The product changing how animals are fed, that could be a solution.
And we did see some rain across the Brazos Valley for today, but things will be quieting down for the rest of this evening going into the overnight hours. This is by 10 o'clock tonight. We will be seeing the rain chances all but come to an end. As we move into Tuesday afternoon, this is where we could see a few more isolated storms. Starting off with some low clouds in the morning. By the afternoon, there's your isolated thunderstorm chances right there. But again, we're going to go about 20% shot. So I think most of us probably not going to see too much, but an isolated storm cannot be ruled out as we head into tomorrow, mid to late afternoon. Again, those pop up with the afternoon heating, then they die down again on into the evening hours, maybe a few clouds in the morning, and then an isolated thunderstorm threat as we head into Wednesday as well. But rain chances are going to be about 20% over the next few days. So tonight, temperatures dipping down into the 70s for us. 73 looking pretty popular here. 73 Bryan College Station, same for Cameron, down to Navasota. 75 in Brenham tonight. And then tomorrow, high temperatures will make it up into the lower 90s, right around 90, 92 degrees. But remember the humidity. It'll feel like the mid to upper 90s when you factor that in. And checking out what we are anticipating here over the next 10 days. 91s, 92s. How about that for the rest of this week? That's not bad for July. We can get into the triple digits. So we'll take these below normal temperatures. Isolated thunderstorms possible Tuesday through Friday. And again, those afternoon and evening thunderstorms, most of us probably not seeing too much. Then highs in the mid 90s Saturday and Sunday. And then as we head into next week, hot on Monday at 95. And it may try to come down again next week, and maybe some more rain chances as well.
A lot of us have relied on takeout or delivery during the pandemic, but our tipping habits haven't necessarily kept up, even with the difficult year the restaurant industry has had.
We found that more than 4 in 10 people said that they're going to support local businesses more and they're going to tip better. That sounds great. The thing is, though, last year, even more people told us that. And we've done this tipping survey many years running now, and we really haven't seen the overall numbers budge much at all.
There's a new survey on tipping that's out today from creditcards.com that found only 17% of people who pick up takeout, well, they always tip. For food delivery, a little over half of people are tipping all the time. It can be unclear just how much you should be tipping in these cases because you're not receiving the same service as you would at a sit-down restaurant.
For takeout, I don't think you always have to tip. I think this is one where if the restaurant is primarily a takeout business, there's maybe not as much of an expectation. But if it's more of a sit-down restaurant that just happens to be offering takeout, that's a time when it might be nice to tip something like 10% to show appreciation for the staff, but also to acknowledge that they put the work in and they probably juggled this among other things.
The survey found on average among the people tipping when they're picking up food, they're leaving 15%. It increases to 17% for food delivery, 20% for a tip at sit-down restaurants, and that's up from 19% back in 2019. Wildfires are burning in new places, and trees also aren't growing back in the same ways. The impact that this is having across the country and what scientists say it's going to take to reverse these trends. The 2021 wildfire season is already setting records. It's only the second time the wildfire preparedness level has been this high this early in the season since 1990. Researchers are finding it is due to climate change. Dan Grossman takes a look at why this affects all of us.
In these faraway parts of the country, you'll stumble across roads less traveled. Roads lined with scars of a reality Phil Higuera fears will only become more commonplace than it already has.
It's really clear now that our systems are changing and fire activity is responding very acutely to a warming climate.
In the last 2,000 years, wildfires in the high Rocky Mountains of the western United States are burning nearly twice as often as before, and they're burning more often in higher elevations that have historically been more resistant to them.
Over 70% of the total area burned since 1984 occurred last year in 2020.
Phil is the man behind those numbers.
This is our cold storage room.
Alongside PhD candidate Kira Wolf, the professor of fire ecology at the University of Montana has been studying sediment samples to observe fire activity and how it's reaching heights, both literal and figurative, like never before.
Losing all of that canopy cover leads to much hotter temperatures in the burned areas, even compared to adjacent forest. And so that can kind of exacerbate that drought stress for seedlings.
Kira just alluded to the drought from hotter temperatures, and researchers are in agreement it is directly tied to climate change. 4 of California's 5 largest fires ever burned last year, and the 3 largest in Colorado's history burned last year as well. But if you think this is only affecting those in areas most prone to these wildfires, it is not.
Millions of people who don't live in the mountains or close to where these wildfires burn can be exposed to some of the hazards that result from wildfires, and in particular, wildfire smoke.
It also has the potential to affect future generations. After millions of years of fire activity in alpine forests such as these, trees started to adapt by developing pine cones on their branches. At a certain temperature during a fire, they'll burst and drop their seeds into the ground, which will then grow into budding trees as a way to regenerate the forest. The concern is with this increased fire activity that we're seeing, new fires will burn these baby pine trees before they've had time to produce these cones, potentially wiping out forests down the road.
There's a lot of evidence that tree regeneration after fires is declining because of these stressful post-fire conditions.
Further concern points to the possible carbon dioxide emitted during these fires and the lessened number of trees to take it out of the atmosphere, leading researchers to the only possible road to reconciliation.
Climate change needs to be addressed. There's no way to really solve this wildfire problem without mitigating carbon emissions.
I'm Dan Grossman.
Dan, thank you. And as our climate changes, scientists say more of the country will be at risk for wildfires, including the upper Midwest and East Coast. Israel is now offering a COVID-19 booster shot. Start the newsfeed with this story that it is the first country to offer a booster. It's a third dose of the Pfizer vaccine that's being offered for those with a weakened immune system. Israel is dealing with a Delta variant surge right now, and as cases rise in the United States, Israel's numbers could really foreshadow what we could see here. In Israel, 90% of new cases are the Delta variant, but the death rate appears to be less than previous surges in the pandemic. As society reopens, it appears there is less momentum to pay essential workers hazard pay. The Associated Press says only about a third of states used federal relief money to reward workers who went to their jobs throughout the pandemic. Federal government did broaden the ability of state and local governments to use relief money to pay workers. One of the biggest public health challenges of our time may not even be on your radar. It's antibiotic resistance. It happens when germs defeat the drugs that are designed to kill them. The CDC says without urgent action, many modern medicines could become obsolete, and that would turn even common infections into deadly threats. More than 2.8 million antibiotic-resistant infections happen each year in the United States. They kill more than 35,000 people. Some of the causes are overprescribing of antibiotics, patients not taking them as prescribed, or unnecessary antibiotics used in agriculture. Amanda Brandeis traveled to a trout farm to see how one product aims to reduce or even eliminate the need for antibiotics in animals.
With a population of 15,000,
everybody up here is hunting, fishing, ranch kids mostly.
This is one of the most bustling parts of Susanville. trout outnumber people.
Yeah, tens of thousands.
And at McFarland Springs Trout Farm, they're served only the cleanest ingredients.
Plant-based with the different types of algae.
Flagon Watkins is the hatchery manager.
We do the spawning, feeding, moving them, cleaning out their raceways.
The farm prides itself on sustainability, feeding the trout a diet free of fish meal and fish oil.
Take fish to feed fish? Yeah, eventually you're going to run out.
The aquaculture industry must feed billions of farm fish. Sustainability is critical to meet the growing demand worldwide.
We need different sources for all the nutrients that fish meal carries with it.
It's Rick Barrow's job to find those ingredients.
When it's for human consumption, you also want it to be highly nutritious for the consumer.
A fish nutritionist, he spent more than a decade developing plant-based feeds for the USDA.
This is very new. It's not widely accepted yet.
Fishing communities in developing countries often rely on antibiotics to boost animal growth and prevent disease outbreaks. When these drugs are overused in fish and livestock, bacteria become resistant and can be transmitted to humans.
Bacteria that have become resistant to antibiotics are much harder to treat and can cause major health issues to the human population.
Dr. Suresh Menon is on a quest to stop the use of antibiotics in animal feeds.
Try to boost the animal's immune function first. That should be the first step.
He says their nutrient-rich product, Mr. Feed, is doing that. In trials around the world, millions of animals are showing improved health, growth, and survival.
Salmon, trout, chicken, swine. We have shown under extreme disease exposure conditions in chickens and fish that our product helps them completely recover.
And Mr. Feed is also good for the planet. It's made by converting agricultural waste into food, waste that might otherwise go to the landfill.
Thousands of tons of all the spent grain. Some of the microbreweries can do some things with it, but the big breweries cannot. We can take all of that material to our plant and produce Mr. Feed.
That serves as a protein source, fatty acid source, immune stimulant, and survival benefit.
While a smaller operation, they'll be among some of the world's largest suppliers of animal products now using Mr. Feed, like snapper fish from Costa Rica that could end up in your local Costco, or shrimp from Indonesia being supplied to Walmart.
And in the U.S., of course, we are providing this to Tyson, which is the biggest chicken producer.
We're just on the front edge of this.
Barrow says several other companies are developing sustainable feeds with innovative ideas.
They're real, the prices are coming down.
And our children, our grandchildren will finally have meat, proteins that are produced in the right way.
Turning the tide one farm at a time.
I'll put our fish next to any other fish.
In Susanville, California, I'm Amanda Brandeis reporting.
Well, thanks for being with us for 25 News at 6. Be sure to tune in to our next broadcast tonight at 10. I'll see you then.